Today for our daily cancellation, we're going to be canceling Viacom for firing Nick Cannon after he made racist anti-white comments. We're canceling Viacom for canceling Nick Cannon. But we're not canceling them for firing him. We're canceling them because they didn't fire him for the anti-white comments. So let's go back and go over this again. A clip from Nick Cannon's podcast went viral yesterday. And in the clip, he's mostly babbling incoherently, so it's kind of hard to understand what he's trying to say. But he does make his feelings about white people loud and clear.
When we talk about the power of melanated people, when we talk about who we really are as guys and understanding that our melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it. So then when you see what, Dr. Francis C. Welsing talked about is that fear in that
just genetic annihilation,
that deficiency of when you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul. That we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less, and where the term actually comes from, because I'm bringing it all the way back around to Minister Farrakhan, to where they may not have the compassion or the when they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus, when they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate them. So then they're acting out of fear, they're acting out of low self-esteem, they're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil. The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and
fight or flight,
in order to survive.
Exactly.
So then these people who didn't have what we had, and when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. Because they're in these Nordic mountains. They're in these rough, torrential environments. So they're acting as animals.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages.
Okay, so to review, white people are a little less evil, savages, barbaric, closer to animals, plus we don't have souls, compassion, or self-esteem. So, and we rob, kill, and rape. He put all of that into 2 minutes. You have to sift through a lot of incomprehensible nonsense to get to it, but that's what he was trying to say. He does also appear to think that melanin in the skin is like some kind of magical elixir, some sort of supernatural formula that imbues soul and compassion and other things into people. He sees melanin like, it's almost like he sees it as, what's the thing from Star Wars? The thing that Jedi have that gives them superpowers? Mitol or mitochondria? No, it's not that. Whatever it is, melanin is like that, what the Jedi have. And of course, that's all pseudoscientific inanity. It doesn't make any sense at all. But the real issue here is the stuff he said about white people and the fact that he thinks that we're evil, soulless savages. That I think is the headline. It is actually helpful, though, I have to say. I'm actually grateful to the bigot Nick Cannon for saying this, because the term racism is thrown around so much that you forget what it means. You can easily forget what racism means because we're calling everything racism these days. And even someone's hairstyle or an art curator collecting art from white artists, we're calling that racist. So after a while, maybe you forget it, the term loses its meaning. And then you see this and you realize, oh, okay, that's what racism is. That right there. Racism is a guy degrading an entire race of people and outright saying they are less than him and savage and evil. That is racism, and that is literally supremacism. That is black supremacism that we're seeing there. To a T, textbook racism. Maybe not modern textbook racism because they're changing the definition, but a real textbook racism right there. Any white person who said that, goes without saying, if you can even imagine a white person of any prominence whatsoever saying anything like that about black people or any other race, they would be fired, shunned, canceled, destroyed in a heartbeat, without hesitation, without question, and not one person anywhere would defend them. Nor should they. Nor would I. You see, objecting to cancel culture doesn't mean that we have to take the position that nobody should ever suffer any consequences for anything they do or say. That would be silly, of course. That's not what we mean when we talk about cancel culture. At least it's not what I mean. Cancel culture is about shutting down intelligent debate, punishing people for doing and saying things that are not actually objectionable and oftentimes correct. And cancel culture is also disproportionate. So it could be that someone says or does something that is objectionable, but the response is totally out of proportion. So, for example, some kids playing around with dough at Jimmy John's become national pariahs. That is a consequence that is way out of proportion to the crime. These are not public figures. These are just some kids being stupid. They're going to lose their job at Jimmy John's, but to have their face plastered all over the place, to be denounced in mainstream publications across the country and the globe, way out of proportion. That's cancel culture. Cancel culture also goes digging for offenses. Okay, the cancel culture mob is looking to be offended. They're looking for things, finding things people said and did long ago to destroy them. Article someone wrote 33 years ago about women in combat, which also wasn't even objectionable and was completely correct. But that's how cancel culture behaves. In this case, it's completely different. We have a prominent person saying something publicly, saying it now, not saying it 30 years ago. And what they're saying is wrong and extremely objectionable and actually racist by any sane definition of the term. So this is not, yes, he should be fired for that, absolutely. And again, if it was a white person, nobody would be saying that they shouldn't be. If it was a white celebrity who works for a major media company and they went out and said about another race that they're savages and evil and less than him, nobody would be saying, don't fire him. Of course they're going to fire him for that. Well, I mean, what else is a company going to do? No, the company's not going to stand by you. They shouldn't have to stand by you for that. You're the one who decided to come out and say that, and now you need to accept the consequences. It's not the company's job to, take the slings and arrows for you being a revolting, stupid, insane bigot. And so he is fired, right? But the problem is that he wasn't fired for that. Here's the statement from Viacom. Viacom CBS denounces bigotry of any kind, and we categorically denounce all forms of anti-Semitism. We have spoken with Nick Cannon about an episode of his podcast, Cannon's Class, on YouTube, which promoted hateful speech and spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. While we support ongoing education and dialogue in the fight against bigotry, we are deeply troubled that Nick has failed to acknowledge or apologize for perpetuating anti-Semitism, and we are terminating our relationship with him. Okay, wait a second. Anti-Semitic? What? It wasn't anti-Semitic. It was anti-white in general. It was bigoted against all white people. It wasn't focused exclusively on Jewish people. What are they talking about? Well, it turns out that Nick Cannon went on a bit of a bigotry spree during that episode, and also at one point said that, quote, Semitic people are black people, and quote, you can't be anti-Semitic when we are the Semitic people, when we are the same people they want to be, that's our birthright. And he also said that black people are the true Hebrews. That's what they fired him for. Even though what you just heard there is, while nonsensical and weird and incorrect and objectionable, it is way tamer than what he said about white people in general. I mean, remember, he called white people evil savages, for God's sake. It literally does not get more racist than that. That is the height of racist language. You couldn't possibly be more racist than this. That's as racist as it gets. And this is why Viacom is canceled, they couldn't bring themselves to fire Nick Cannon for anti-white racism, or even to denounce it, to acknowledge it. It's smacking them, anti-white racism, smacking them in the face with a sledgehammer, which these days often it does in a literal sense as well, but they couldn't do it. He's out here calling white people soulless barbarians, and they don't fire him for it. They don't even specifically mention it in their announcement of his termination. Instead, they use the Semitic comments as the excuse to dump him. This is how trendy and acceptable anti-white racism is. You can denounce white people as subhuman monsters, and you won't lose your job for it. You may lose your job for something else. Your company may find some other reason to dump you because they're afraid of what you might say next. But that's not going to be the reason they stay. They're going to find something else. And they certainly won't come out and say anti-white racism is bad and we reject it. Think about how crazy that actually is. It is now edgy. It is controversial. It is provocative. It is offensive to simply say that it's bad to hate all white people. That statement now is like, people don't want to say that. It's actually racist to say that. I've been told this directly, that to speak out against anti-white racism is itself racist. It is racist to be opposed to anti-white racism. That's where we are. And we should also mention that if you go on Twitter or social media, you're going to find that there is a lot of support for what Nick Cannon said. Not just for him, not just people saying, oh, you let him have a second chance or whatever. People supporting what he actually said. Like, yes, I agree with it. White people are soulless barbarians who are subhuman and lack compassion. There's a lot of that. Anti-white racism is the only mainstream form of racism. I didn't say it's the only form of racism that exists in the world. It's the only kind that is acceptable in the mainstream. Not just acceptable, not just tolerated, but oftentimes celebrated. And so if you pretend to be against racism and fighting racism, but you're not acknowledging this kind of racism, then you're just a cowardly, hypocritical fraud. And there are a lot of those to go around these days. This video is sponsored by BlinkSale, the revolutionary invoicing software for contractors and small businesses. Spend less time billing and more time making bank with BlinkSale. Get a free trial at the link in the video description.